Welcome to this week's episode of Marijuana Mind with yours truly, Dr. J. Davis, and my brilliant and unorthodox co-host, Cynthia Brewer, who's making eyes at me.
I'm not making eyes at you. I feel like I'm gonna lose my temper one day and I'm gonna like just clear my desk.
Listen, do you want me to be posted with my mouth agape a little bit?
Let's just clarify something. There are so much worse that you could be caught doing with your mouth that or dancing or riding a kid's ATV throughout the property or eating a ham sandwich. I get it all on film, and you're worried about a gaping mouth as if that's going to be suggestive or unflattering.
Screwed.
Nothing should be gaping.
I'm just saying, like Justin is unfiltered most of the time of his life, and he doesn't care. Have you ever seen him eat a roast beef sandwich, ever? I've
had that privilege.
Okay, so he eats it like it owes him money, and he's doing it in a favor. Anyways,
I mean, that's how you should eat anything. Like it owes you money.
You ate it like Paris Hilton eats a burger on top of a vehicle. Just with more.
It's a lucky sandwich.
It was right behind his desk too. It was like, if he just moves slightly onto the desk a little bit, I could probably make tens of dollars off of this gentleman right here.
People are probably wondering who this other voice is, or maybe you're watching and you're wondering if you're on YouTube, who's at the bottom of the screen. So maybe I should introduce him.
Well, I mean, yeah, they wonder what we're doing most of the time anyways, but go ahead, do it.
Well, as usual, we have a guest, and this week's guest's name is Andrew Cantor.
Did you pronounce that correctly?
Yes, Andrew Cantor. That's right. I know Cantors, believe me. And he's an attorney, but he has some pretty good credentials here. So beyond just the fact that one of his clients is a major dispensary in San Francisco, who apparently I can't name, but nevertheless, it's one of the big ones. He also went to UF undergrad, which is a coincidence, total coincidence. So in psychology, then went on to the University of Chicago, which is a very prestigious school, in case you didn't know that, and got a master's degree in statistics. Who would have known?
Statistics?
Yeah, before going.
What are the odds?
Buzzing.
Went to, what are the odds?
I know. There's some statistic humor you got there.
Yes. That would kill in Chicago.
You're welcome, everybody. You're welcome.
And then eventually went on to Tulane to get his law degree, where he graduated cum laude, and
not magna
cum laude.
Okay.
Magnum,
well, there's summa. There's
also.
Summa or magnum. I just want to make sure everyone knows his credentials.
Let's just say it matches his condom size.
Yeah.
And also interesting, which I think we have a lot we can talk about significantly, is that you did live in Miami as well, and you were a prosecutor, right? You were in Miami. I think and the last thing I have to add before we come back to that is that you have a cat that you love like your own child, named Epi, right? Epi.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. My paralegal.
Oh, that's kind of fun. That's so dumb, but it's so funny at the same time. So welcome to the Marijuana Mind podcast.
Thank you. It's good to be here. I'm a fan.
I feel like Justin may know you from other things besides the podcast.
No, we went to UF. Did we overlap, but never met him. It was total coincidence.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so like I'm Justin serious. Davis or like Jay Davis, Andrew, you have the ability to practice law in both Florida and California, like Justin can practice medicine.
Correct. Yeah, I used to practice in Florida.
And you're currently in California, there, right?
Yeah.
I'm still licensed, yeah.
So if you need representation, Justin, he's just a phone call away.
When he needs representation.
Exactly. I think, see, this is how I know that you know Justin on a deeper, more visceral level. So talk to us a little bit about working in the cannabis space in California when you're working with like these big MSOs, which are like kind of the dirty side of the cannabis space, and you represent them?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it's been very interesting because the laws have been rapidly evolving.
Mm-hmm.
And I oftentimes would equate it to my client as the wild, wild west because we're figuring it out together and kind of building it up together. The regulations would come online every year and they would be different. But it really came down to companies that were growing so quickly and were bringing in money hand over fist because of the enormous pent-up demand for marijuana.
Pent-up demand. I like that
Yeah,
statement. Like we've just
bubbling.
been jonesing for it, for mom and dad to let us have some. So when
Yeah.
you're representing these companies, I think a lot of our listeners hear from they hear from the company, right, Justin? Or they hear from an ancillary company that supports them in some capacity. They don't really hear from like the people that have to defend them, right? Or like go to bat for them or kind of explain away some of their mishaps. Have you ever had to go and like justify some behavior from a client that you didn't think was really favorable?
Well, I mean, yes, there had been the most like salient situation that I can recall would be just how they categorize what's called cost of goods sold. And they would be selling so much marijuana and bringing in so much cash, and they're expected to pay taxes on this.
Mhm.
Oh,
And
do they pay it?
with a little nudging
I
from the
mean,
IRS.
I
Yeah.
mean, well, I have a few questions about that. I mean, first of all, wasn't there some law passed in I don't know if it's California or in general that maybe it's in Florida, but I wonder if
It's
it's
a,
in
I know
California.
what you're talking about.
They can no longer write off their expenses. So it seems like it's a little unfair that, and then maybe this is just a Florida rule, but
No,
that,
it's not.
okay, that you would be a business that you have to pay taxes on your business and everyone else can write off their expenses, but as a dispensary, you can't write off all of your expenses. Is that accurate, or have you run into that as a thing, a thing?
Well, that thing was done probably 5 years ago,
Mhm.
when there was just really it was basically a dispute about taxes, about how much money did they have to cut a check to the IRS for, and how much money did they bring in, and then apportioning the money that came in because so much of it was cash. So, a little creative accounting can lead to, a situation where there's in dispute about what the taxes are.
Is this 280E that Justin's referencing? Like what can be like deducted under 280E, marijuana business owner deductions?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what he was trying to get at. Like,
Isn't it hypocritical though that the federal government wants to tax the marijuana industry so hard, and yet it's not legal. They can't do regular banking. They're forced. It's not like they necessarily want to be in a cash economy. They have no choice but to be in a cash economy.
That's right, because the tension between California and the federal government. Boy, are you accusing the government of being hypocritical? Because that's pretty controversial. No, it's very interesting, just the fact that in California you can have it delivered to you, but in other states you'll get arrested for it.
so
And so that, yeah,
you're in an adult use market, like a quote legalized, everyone can have a little, right? In
mhm,
California.
correct.
In Florida, where it's medical specific, and Florida is one of those states that does not let you tax medicine. So right now, in a medical specific market, government's not getting shit. Like Daddy DeSantis does not get to pull like 25% if he wants to. And so we have to wait in
Right.
Florida for that tax revenue to be generated after adult use goes through.
But
So
I
right
think
now,
the
nobody's getting any.
dispensaries have to pay taxes. Just the customer doesn't have to pay taxes.
No, yeah, you can't. I'm a patient
Right.
customer
Patient.
and I don't have to pay tax on my medicine. And so that money isn't being collected and it's not going to anybody else. Are you saying that our MMTCs are paying taxes to the federal government for a federally illegal like business?
I think so.
Good answer.
Right? I think that they, on their profits, they have to pay taxes to this, well, not to the state, I suppose, because we don't have a state income tax, perhaps. I don't know how that works with businesses,
I
but
don't
I'm
think
sure
they
because I have a
are.
business. But I think that they are paying taxes to everyone. Just the customer doesn't have to pay tax. So Florida's losing business. You can jump in here anytime, statistician, attorney, enter, but if I'm wrong, but I think that the dispensaries are paying taxes, probably a lot of taxes, but
Oh yeah.
the patient is not paying tax in Florida because it's a medical necessity.
Well, it's been a while since I looked at the Florida regulations. I'm primarily focused with California, so I can't speak to that with complete confidence. But what I can tell you is that here in California, they're definitely paying taxes, and there's a very weird gray area while the government is trying to collect taxes on a product that it considers illegal. And so everybody's sort of walking a fine line here. But they want their money. They want to get paid.
Everybody wants to get paid, even though it's like they don't want to claim it as a legitimate business, but they definitely want to get their tax money from it.
Correct.
I think it's interesting because if you're dealing in illegal substances like marijuana, then it would be considered racketeering. All of the
RICO?
everything.
It's not RICO. RICO's conspiracy to commit a crime,
No,
not tax
racketeering.
evasion. That's like kind of RICO because of like mobsters,
RICO's
right?
the mafia.
Yeah.
But then the federal government is participating by accepting money from them for what they're telling them is illegal. So it seems like the federal government is just as guilty of committing an illegal act.
They're talking out of both sides of their mouth, that's for sure.
Financially benefiting off of something they deem illegal or unsuitable. Or maybe even we go as far as talking about our fearless leader, Daddy DeSantis, running for president, and his number one donor is in fact a cannabis company, but he does not condone cannabis use, nor does he endorse it. Is that not weird?
Everything about that man is weird.
Isn't that like you're not a fan? Not a big fan?
No, he won't be getting my vote.
I think
I
it's
don't know what it is. The guy does not know how to use verbal punctuation when he gives speeches. It's like one long sentence without any pausing until he runs out of breath or passes out.
I think it's generally accepted at this point that he's not going to get elected president.
But then, like, what do you think is going to happen? You think it's going to be a Trump DeSantis ticket?
I don't know because I thought about that.
My neighbor down the street thinks so. It's all over his yard.
But they were kind of adversarial. I mean, they were friends for a long time.
Frenemies.
But then when DeSantis said he was going to run for president, I think they became adversaries.
Yeah, but is it really that far-fetched to say, if you kind of dug this guy and you really dug me, and then he's out, that I put him on my ticket to kind of gain back his constituents?
I don't know. I just know that Trump takes everything personally and holds grudges. And so DeSantis having said things about him that he probably didn't like, I don't know if he would be able to work with him or not.
I mean, but
is driven by spite.
Yeah, and that's okay. And so are MMTCs. I kind of think. I mean, it's almost identical how things are conducted in the cannabis market with gobbling up other companies and talking shit at the same time. So I want to talk to you guys both and get your opinion from a legal perspective and a doctor perspective. HB 6028 is talking about removing cannabis from the U.S. Controlled Substances Act. And Justin and I have talked at length about this just on shows independent or when we just ignore our guests completely and go on a tangent. But this is something of it's a very sensitive subject, in my opinion. HB 6028 also covers expungement of convictions for felonious activities. However, with our new speaker, probably won't get a lot of traction because it is a House bill. And we have a new, not so canna-friendly Speaker of the House. What do you think, Andrew, personally or professionally, about removing cannabis from the Controlled Substance Act?
I'm tremendously in favor of it. I think it's ludicrous that it's there. I mean, how is it that that it's considered a controlled substance and is subject to the same prosecutions as other controlled substances that are way more pernicious?
Pernicious. Not Justin. What means pernicious?
Pernicious anemia. That's what I think of when I hear permission.
So
What does that mean?
lots, big. I don't know.
Uh,
Okay, so Andrew, we're gonna put him
egregious.
down as a favor to unscheduling it, right?
Yes.
Removing it all is not it's not D, it's just it's just removed. Justin,
it out of
what are
there.
your thoughts about
Yeah,
removing it from the
I think that scheduling it will be very problematic.
like moving it from a 1 to a 3?
Yeah, I think that'll be problematic.
Well, I mean, that happened. So like, what is problematic about rescheduling it?
Because then it becomes treated like, other medicines, essentially. It's under the rule of the DEA. And it's going to be, most of the states right now, right? It's recreational, it's adult use. And it's also something that grows naturally. It's not really how it's developed. And to all of a sudden say, oh, it's going to be run by the DEA,
like big pharma.
And that's the next thing. That's I think what happens is it becomes a way to make money by big pharma instead of in the hands of the people, presumably. And it's also, again, it's just a naturally growing plant. I just think that those kinds of regulations are going to cause big problems for everyone. It's not going to, maybe financially, it will be better than what there is now, but it's going to be problematic versus unscheduling it is going to make it really how it's treated in most places already, right? It's not going to cause tremendous waves, and it's
You
going
don't
to
think it will?
unscheduling it.
Let's talk about the difference between, well, first off, the only reason and all three of us are sitting here right now is because it was a 1. Like if it was always something lesser, we would never have had a chance to play with it because it would have gone straight to pharmaceutical. The highly regulated industry has to have oversight. They already are trusted with the most sensitive of medications. So why not just let them also get cannabis? It'd probably be in like a pill form, really boring. And you can't like snort it or light it on fire. I don't know. That's what I picture.
You could try, but yeah.
Always, yeah. If it was always there at a lesser number, then we never would be here right now. So that's a fact. If it was always not on the controlled substances list, it would go to big tobacco because they can grow it quickly, efficiently, effectively, and cheaply. So we also wouldn't be able to play with it there.
Well, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
It's either going to become, we know that it can only remain illegal for so long. And
It's going to
so,
happen.
what happens as it become unscheduled and it becomes more like tobacco and alcohol, or does it become scheduled and it becomes more like, the purview of pharmacies and big pharma?
Both of them suck, in my opinion. But I was listening to this podcast the other day about Juul, and the vaping crisis and stuff. But actually, it went through the whole process of this company that was called Plume, and then they also made the packs, like the packs vaporizer thing, all those like. So, and then they finally turned into Juul, which would make the pods and the convenience.
I thought you meant the singer, Juul the singer.
No one would ever make a documentary about her.
No, she actually, I don't use
She used to be homeless.
She has a podcast with Joe Rogan, who, whether you like Joe Rogan or not, I'm sorry, but he has great podcasts.
I like him. I don't like her.
They're very long and detailed. I urge everyone to listen to the podcast that he has with Juul. It's a phenomenal podcast.
And if you want an even better one, listen to the one with Post Malone where they take mushrooms or get high. It's actually way more entertaining than Juul with her jacked up grill. So, all right. Anyways, on this Juul, like nicotine replacement smoking vape device podcast, it went through the history, and they were actually approached by a large tobacco company because they saw such a big dip in their sales because this nicotine replacement thing was there. So I feel like people use cannabis and they may not smoke cigarettes, but if that means that they can kind of tap into the market, they're going to go after it like crazy. They're going to take up all of it.
Yeah.
Here's what I think it really should come down to is that if everyone should be allowed to grow cannabis for their own personal private use, Everyone. It's a plant. You should be able to make it, grow it yourself and use it. However, if you're going to sell it commercially, then there should be, it shouldn't be limited to only giant companies. How, entrepreneurs should be able to be in it, but everybody should have regulations, strict regulations for the production of it, because it's something that people ingest in their bodies, and it should be
Right.
safe, right?
Well, I
It
mean,
should
you
be
can
treated like tobacco.
Yes.
no, because
No.
I
Oh,
don't
we got
think
disagreement
you want
here.
to treat it like tobacco, because tobacco is like well, okay, highly regulated industry. You want to treat it like alcohol. Like there's an age limit, there's a consumption limit. You can't make your own booze. I mean,
Is
you can, but it's illegal.
is it still legal, like, to make your own booze? You
I'm
can
fairly
definitely
certain.
make
Let's ask an attorney. Can I make
Yeah.
my own moonshine?
Believe it or not, it's not something that comes up very often. There's not a lot of people
Yeah, I didn't think
brewing
so.
their own brewing their
So
own
I mean,
moonshine.
everyone brews their own beer.
not everyone brews their own beer, just
Many
guys
people
named
brew their
like
own beer.
Tanner that hang
And
out at micro brews or gastro brew pubs. And
no,
then he makes
many
try my
people-
brew, bro. It's an IPA.
Yeah.
I made it with
The
Hawaiian
Freudian
punch
slip.
and lavender leaves. Tanner, Connor, all of them, bro.
But there's a difference for making something for yourself and
Right.
for selling it to the public.
I make my own edibles because I like certain flavors. I like sour apple and I like mixing mango and other flavors. I also like making them more savory for like infusing garlic butter for like pasta dishes. So you can get your edibles that way. I don't always want in Florida, you shouldn't have chocolate as an edible option in the sun, and then you're wondering why all of it is in one corner because it melted. So it's odd, but like I enjoy making my own. I'm not selling them, but
Right.
But
because
if,
I'm the only one ingesting them. If I was to sell them, I would need Andrew to get my ass out of jail.
right. Well, then it becomes
You-
something entirely different.
What does it become?
When you start selling it for commercial purposes and you start generating revenue on it, especially if it's something that you're consuming as this thing that's considered food, as an edible would be, it would be subject to different kinds of regulations.
But what does commercial mean to you in
Making
this
money on it.
Okay, so I can't
making
just be selling them for pleasure and
I mean, you can sell them for whatever reason you want, but if you're
donations.
generating, yeah,
No, I think
That's a tricky one though. If I
no,
just accept
if
donations.
you're distributing it widely to people, marketing it and distributing it beyond just your own personal use or people that might come over to your house, or your home and use it, it should be regulated,
Of
because
course.
people are consuming it, and also with cannabis, people are inhaling it, which is very dangerous. I mean, this is better than anyone with your testing lab, that there's a lot of contaminants can be very dangerous for people if it's not regulated.
But what I know mostly from my non-cannabis life is that if you make and grow and sell shitty weed, that people aren't going to buy weed from you anymore, Derek. So like that's something where the quality kind of has to match and stay consistent on the black
No,
market,
that's the
or else
market
you lose
economics.
customers.
But here's the thing, is that where you're wrong is that there's one thing between like something that's very potent, and there's a difference between something that's safe.
I
So,
never know the potency of the weed I buy on the black market.
but when you use it, if it's potent or not.
I
How
don't
much
know. I
just know
can't
if
tell
it-
the difference between a 15% and a 20%. My body does not have that meter. I just know if I
But
like it or if I don't.
But if Derek sells you some shite, you're not going to buy it from him,
Backstory,
right?
Andrew. Derek is this like fictional, like every dealer that has a backpack, a JanSport, and possibly
Dreadlocks?
method of like transportation that is not a vehicle, like a skateboard, rollerblades sometimes, hoverboard, bicycle. He doesn't have a license. Okay. So that's when we say Derek, it's just every dealer in the black market is named Derek. And so that's who we're referencing.
I think we're talking about my neighbor. Okay.
Could be. It could be everyone's
Yeah.
neighbor.
But
Absolutely.
you've seen, as running a lab, a major lab here in Florida, and also actually that's national, that you can have marijuana that is seemingly great, right? Everyone would think it was excellent quality, but it might have lead in it, or it might have some other heavy metal or pesticide in it. So that one would probably sell great on the black market. Or
But
maybe they put in just a tad bit of fentanyl or something, right? It really
no, who
gives you
would
a
dose
boost.
their weed with fentanyl? It
A
feels like you
lot
have to
of
go
people
out and
would,
buy more stuff when there already takes a lot of money.
because
Here's
you're
the
making
thing.
it potent. It might be more desirable, but that doesn't mean it's safe.
Okay, yes, you're right, 100%, that just because the big MSOs go somewhere does not mean that they know how to cultivate safe, clean, quality medicine every time. But it also does not mean that Derek puts pesticides in his medicine. I'm not defending the black market. I'm just saying we don't know what's in our medicine in any capacity, as a patient, as a company, or as a doctor, as an attorney, in any
The
market.
market usually will figure it out, though. I mean, the
No,
market will.
that's not
The,
true.
the market, good products will, I mean, I'm not an economist, but
No,
Let's
I
talk about
disagree.
California's market and some of the nuances of why I had to get out quick. So
okay.
California has a laboratory situation where if the higher the number, the more business you're going to get. And this
Right.
is everywhere in every state. But specifically, if your success as a laboratory is contingent on the clients loving your results, and they have to be high, not being a good lab with integrity, but you have to like the results, and then you get to keep working with them. Otherwise, you get no business because some other lab will give them higher numbers that are probably fake. And there's a Bruce Banner situation that we saw where somebody was advertising like a 55% Bruce Banner for $15, and that pissed us off big time. But in California, have you seen any litigation between the growers and the patients, or the legitimacy of the products that they're advertising?
That's an interesting question. No, I haven't. Just basically, a consumer class action for false advertising. Is that what you're
Ooh,
talking about?
tell us about that.
Well, it would be no different if for a pharmaceutical company that published results that simply weren't true, saying that their drug had a certain efficacy rate, but didn't in fact yield the results that it was promising. I see that as an analog to smoking
Are those
marijuana.
public? Are
Or what public?
pharmaceutical testing results of generic meds public for everyone to see?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't
Yes.
know that.
No, I mean, they publish their results. I mean, it's all the fine print. And there's FDA studies are made available to the public. So there's
Oh,
basically yeah.
I had no idea. Okay, so no one checks them. Just like we had a
No,
doctor on one time that was like, do you ever dose yourself based off of Tylenol like you do based off of cannabis? And I'm like,
Hmm.
how much is one Tylenol? I don't know what the potency of Tylenol is. I just always take 2 of whatever's in the cabinet. Just,
Symmetry.
yeah, I
Symmetry.
just take 2. Statistically speaking, I'll be fine. Like, who knows? So is it likely that we'll see more class action lawsuits between people? No?
No, I doubt it.
Oh my
I
gosh.
doubt it because, well, I mean, you got to follow the line. I mean, with marijuana, with drugs, people can be injured, or their ailments can't improve, or they can get worse. And so you can kind of market that to lawyers to make them inclined to take the case because they see dollar signs, right? At the end of
Right.
the day, the legal industry needs to be incentivized to take the case. I don't think, that's going to happen with marijuana because it's something's being published at a certain percentage, but isn't yielding the same kind of psychotropic results, or you're not getting as stoned as you should be getting. I don't see that translating to damages.
What about false advertising?
Well, I mean, false advertising could be a state cause of action or a federal cause of action. And so if it's a federal cause of action, that's probably going to run into just the problem that it's a controlled substance. So I'm not sure how that would be a very interesting situation. You would need a law firm to almost take that on pro bono to like establish a canon of case law to proceed on, because I don't think that exists.
There's
Um,
not a lot of cannabis case law, is there?
no, there's
So
not. So
you're always kind of blazing a trail every time you take on a cannabis like case or situation, if you consider one even, that comes across your desk, because if you don't have that supportive case law, you're going to be essentially writing it yourself. And how
yeah.
successful is that?
Well, you have to rely on you don't have a lot of decisions to rely on to kind of clarify or give shape to the law. What you have is your interpretation and argument of the law, and then you have to hopefully convince other people to agree with you. You know, so it's definitely, it could either help you or hurt you depending on what that case law might evolve to be.
But I
I'm
would
gonna
like,
go ahead,
oh, go
Justin.
ahead. Okay. But I think part of the thing here, why there's not a lot of case law, one of the reasons beyond what you had mentioned, which was interesting about, it's hard to show real damages, is that we're talking about something that is federally illegal right now. And so really what you have is something that is regulated by the states. And so, it's a state, it's basically the states regulating, going in and saying, oh, you're advertising that it's safe, or you're advertising potency, and it's not, we're going to fine you, or you have to take all of this off the shelf. And that's why you're not really seeing lawsuits, because it's the state going in and just fining people or finding them guilty.
What if they don't, though? Do you have a better likelihood of being successful in litigation against a state regulator for not regulating appropriately or effectively?
That's interesting.
Cause it mean suing the government?
Well, essentially yes, but like let's hypothetically it. Yeah, that's a word. We're gonna allow it. I'll allow it. I'm a patient in a medical or an adult use program, and I get sick from a product that I have ingested under the protection of the regulatory environment in which they are supposed to enforce. The regs are there. They've been drafted. The enforcement has been dictated. It's now just about the practice of enforcing it. And let's say they don't do it. They don't keep me safe from putting something poisonous in my body. And I do. And the reason I bring this up is because this has technically happened. I didn't get sick, but the regulators didn't regulate quick enough. And that product that they then recalled had already been way consumed by the time I got the notice. So they admitted to enforcement of their side, catching a product that was not safe, but it was months after the product was sold and gone. So is there a likelihood that somebody that is a patient of a program could actually sue for lack of enforcement?
Highly unlikely.
Yeah, I didn't think so.
Also,
the government,
it's not just a matter of being wronged, right? It's a matter of being wronged and there's damages.
it's
So,
also
how do I prove damages?
Right. How?
It doesn't.
That's exactly right.
It's also a function of the fact that the government has laws in place that prevent you from suing it for those kinds of situations. They're called shield laws. So just like, I mean, it's very difficult to do that. Just like you couldn't sue the fire department if they were late to coming to your home to put out a fire, then you couldn't, your tax dollars are funding that, but you also can't.
Well, what about if they saw the fire, but they didn't tell me I was on fire for like 2 more days?
It's pretty difficult
That's
to sue the government.
negligence.
Well, it's negligence, which would be a cause of action on the private level. But if we're talking about the government, they make the laws, they put into laws to protect themselves financially because otherwise everybody would be suing the government.
Well, the thing is the growers are perfectly fine challenging the regulators. Like MMTCs in Florida will challenge things that are passed down from the regulators, and sometimes they'll win. It's all very private. California has a pretty open public records law, like history with cannabis, and punishments that are doled out almost as if they're bragging about how like their enforcement is, pretty good comparably to other markets that maybe don't advertise the punishments that are doled out. But I just feel like the growers have no problem challenging the government, whereas patients would not even have a fighting chance. So you can sue over not getting a license. You can sue over not getting permission to do something. You can challenge over this. You can get the governor to allow you to do this if the lawmakers don't. That's happened how many times? But like we haven't heard once of a patient being successful in suing either the cultivator, the regulators, or the program.
And that might be different 20 years from now, but you're right. It's still in its early stages. And so it is an interesting question about how that's going to develop and change, and it will change.
Will you take on a case that would be that sensitive?
I would consider it.
Consider
I
it.
would consider it. I would
I'll-
consider it. I would take it under advisement.
That's good.
So Andrew Cantor, I want to
Yes.
go back. I want to jump back a little bit. You were the former Miami prosecutor.
Ooh.
You must have prosecuted. I mean, thinking about Miami, there's a lot of marijuana down in Miami.
Oh, there's a lot of drugs in Miami.
And this was for what year was this that you were down there?
This would have been in 2006.
It was long before the legalization, even medicinally, of cannabis in Florida. So
Yeah.
did you find yourself having to prosecute people over, I'm not talking about like bringing in, sneaking in bales of marijuana from Colombia or wherever. I'm talking just like, a person that got caught possessing
Colombia is
marijuana.
a different type of commodity.
Yeah.
Just so you know. They're not
I'm
known
sure-
for their green. They're known for their white.
or wherever, Mexico, Jamaica.
It happened every day. That
Every
I
day?
would like. Yeah, I mean, basically, as a prosecutor in Miami, because I was like starting out, they would put you in a courtroom and you would be dealing with various misdemeanors. And amongst those, there would always be simple possession of marijuana charges, which in case you can't tell, I'm highly in favor of legalization. And I think it's ridiculous that anybody would be prosecuted for smoking weed. And I was thinking this in 2006. The whole point of being a prosecutor, not the whole point, but is you're supposed to have prosecutorial discretion to make decisions about what charges you think are worthwhile or not. And I would not prosecute a marijuana charge.
I'm looking at some cases. I just put it into my phone. Drugs, prosecution, Miami, 2006. Kind of forgot about the whole pill mill thing was kind of amping up in South Florida right around that time, right? I didn't live here back then, but wasn't that like a thing with opiates?
If it was, it wasn't something I was dealing with.
Okay,
I was dealing mostly with boating in a manatee zone, simple marijuana.
Oh, okay. I see that there's physician indicted with drug and fraud charges, Colombian drug traffickers sentenced, multi-kilogram heroin. There's a bunch of stuff here and just Q1 of 2006. So this is something that in South Florida was a norm for you.
Well, the charges that you have to be a more seasoned prosecutor to be dealing with charges that rose to those levels.
Mm-hmm.
But just as a prosecutor who was just starting out, a lot of the charges that I dealt with were misdemeanors, and a lot of those involved marijuana. And my personal liberal philosophy was that it was simply a waste of time and energy, and I didn't sign up to do that. I don't care if you're smoking a joint. I think if you're being arrested for that, it's almost a slap in the face to a personal affront of our personal liberties. So I chose not to prosecute them. And
You had the ability to choose that?
Not for long, because I didn't last there very long.
Oh yeah, because they were like, yeah, he keeps not doing the prosecution part of his job, and he's only going after manatee people, and we need him to go after more drugs.
Did you ever have anyone hunt a manatee or like
this is actually a very good question, Justin. I'm so glad you asked this.
Thank you.
Finally, we're putting light on this.
No, this is not allowed. Big deal.
The manatees, somebody has to look out for them. That you're not allowed to boat in certain areas or use your motor.
He's got a boat. He knows about wake zones. I want to know if you can eat a manatee.
They're delicious.
Well, they're brined their entire life in salt water. They're
very fatty,
very slow, so they don't have to use a lot of muscle, and they don't stress out. So there's not a lot of that, bad tissue. They also are just covered in fat, and they're vegetarian. So it's like a cow that's been brined its entire life.
No, it's like a veal cow, a calf.
Yeah, because it's not using muscles. It's
and then
floating.
You just load it up with pork fat or something.
Well, you're not allowed to eat them, allegedly. So how much trouble would I get in if I ate a manatee, hypothetically?
If I had a nickel for every time I've asked that question. I mean,
it doesn't matter if it's a baby or an adult manatee. Also,
I would never eat a baby one because that's just rude.
And maybe it's less illegal because there's less manatee.
Good point. Good point. I'll allow it.
Yeah, I think that it's not it's again it's nothing that's come up very often, but I think it probably would depend what you paired it with. So
He's so dry. I don't know when he's making a joke until after I'm like, wait, that's pretty funny.
Did you know that we had a manatee and Trump was carved into the side of it when he was back when he was running?
What?
I think
Yeah,
I think that does ring a bell.
That's horrible.
Okay, I want to say two things about that. First of all,
a real live manatee had someone. Oh,
yeah.
That's messed up. I do not like animal
First
cruelty.
of all, they have a lot of like plankton or algae built up on them. And I think, to be honest, I think that the person simply sort of like, if you took like a brush and you like scrubbed it.
No, it doesn't matter. The fact
underneath,
that you have to restrain this giant
that's
creature.
The second point, right? How did they do that? How did they do that?
Whoever did it should be like punished to the full extent. I don't like people abusing holding it, putting it through that horrible torture, even if it doesn't hurt them physically. It's scary. They don't know what's going on. I just want to like eat it when it's dead. Like, I'm not
Natural
trying
causes.
to go and like ruin its life and make it have like issues with their therapist.
Like, what if it was just not naturally, but accidentally killed by a motorboat? Should you then be able to eat that? Because
same with sandhill cranes.
Yep, I heard that they're also
ribeye of the sky.
Yep, I've heard that.
Oh, you didn't know you were coming on a show that was this disturbing, right? And completely unorganized. I know.
Oh, it's making me hungry.
I know, right? It's delicious. Well, I mean, although the question's legit, I am kind of curious, what happens if you do accidentally kill a protected animal in Florida?
Well, what would happen is you would get a ticket.
So you admit to it?
Well, that depends. You can
That's where your mind
it.
goes immediately. You admit to it.
Well,
you can contest it and you have a trial.
If somebody caught me.
Yes.
If somebody reports you.
Yeah. Well, in order to be arrested for a misdemeanor, you have to be observed by a police officer to do it. You can't be arrested if the cop has secondhand knowledge.
Right. Okay. So my neighbor reporting me for accidentally killing a sandhill crane, hypothetically.
It's
completely hypothetically, because we don't have them here in Titusville. So like, if I do, I can't see them. Like, maybe they're hiding. We have peacocks and stuff. They freak me out. But okay. So I want to know about, obviously not successful as a Miami prosecutor in the environment in which you were asked to do it, but you made it out just fine. And you made it to the West Coast, and you decided to start dabbling in the cannabis space. How did that come to fruition? Because that's not the most savory for an attorney. I would think it would be a lot of extra headache.
Well, actually, the first client that I ever had was a dispensary, and he wanted to sue another dispensary had co-opted his name. It was very similar. And so none of them are in business anymore, but they were both. So I wrote a letter to the other dispensary, basically saying, this is trademark infringement. You're diluting the value of my client's, brand by, co-opting his name and just changing a letter or two. That was the first client I ever had.
Was it
That's an interesting case too. So just because it was similar, and this is something that a lot of people have brought up on the show about genetics, like, how do you, if somebody wanted to come to you and say, I want to sue this dispensary, they're selling a genetic that's called, Justin OG, and I also have Justin OG. How do you legitimize a case like that, or trademark infringement, when no one really knows the origination of some of these genetics?
Well, in this case, then, that's a much more complicated question. In my situation, it was just the name, they had changed one letter.
So it was pretty close.
It wasn't very subtle. It was about as subtle as a knee to the groin. It was very obvious. So but they had put a lot of money into putting a sign up on their store, and it was on the same street.
The same.
Was the sign a very similar, would it be?
No, it wasn't.
It was a very different sign.
The font of it was different, but the name was basically the same. Anybody would have thought these two stores were somehow related, or the same store
on the same street. Come on.
On the same street, yeah, they were.
That'd be like 11-7 down the street from 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Like you
Yeah.
No,
could,
but this was even worse.
Oh my gosh. I know you can't tell us everything because there is some like, protection there, but was it common to have things like that happen, or was it more common to have just like standard lawyering activities like representation, draft a letter kind of thing?
That was a one-off. I met the guy because I went to the dispensary and he knew I was a lawyer. We would talk and he told me about his problem. He professed that he didn't have much money to spend, so we worked out a hybrid arrangement for payment.
Hybrid arrangement for payment. I love
Yeah,
that statement more than breathing
yeah,
because I
and
know what that means.
yes, which I was more than happy to do. And they even sent me to the other store, or I went on my own volition to look to see if the
At
trade
least,
dress,
yeah.
yeah, it was like if they had set up the store similarly.
Mhm.
Um,
Did they?
but no, it was a much bigger store, and
Did he
my guy
make
was.
money off of winning that case?
Well, it never really, it kind of fizzled out because my guy went out of business.
Oh no.
So
Probably
yeah,
because they had his name.
Yeah.
it didn't help. I'll tell you that much.
He's like, no. So, what was the majority of the cannabis activity that you would do out in California after this initial dispensary, kind of, I would
And
say,
I
pro
leveled up.
bono?
And as an attorney, not as a.
You, I just think that it's weird for someone to go into a state and be like, I want to go and work with these characters in cannabis that make life a living hell. And then I have to have no case law, I have no support, in that timeline. This is what, 2007, or what year is this?
I moved here in 2008, so this
Okay,
would have been in
2008.
2009. Yeah.
So the cannabis program was established, but it wasn't well established.
No.
We had maybe 2 years, barely 2 years in. So you're looking at people that were still getting raided, people that were still getting like
Yes. Yes.
that's the Wild West. That's the old school cannabis space.
Mm-hmm. It
And
was
you wanted
skeletal.
that life.
Well, I was put into a situation where I also happened to really quite like the person who owned the dispensary. He was a very affable fellow, and I
Affable fellow. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
My God, your
Keep
face is
going.
so clear and
I bet
huge.
he is. I hope he listens to this podcast and hears how complimentary you are of him as a business owner and of the time you guys shared together.
Yeah, I enjoyed his company,
Yeah.
and like even though we were talking about millions of dollars, like there wasn't the same kind of stress that you might experience, either just for whatever reason the culture. Well, I can guess what the reason was, but the culture was very very relaxed, and and so I kind of immediately slotted into that, and was able to help them mostly in a case with the federal government for tax purposes.
Yeah. You went all the
Yeah.
way to the federal government. How was that
Yeah.
case? Was it successful?
To the extent that there was a resolution, it was, yeah.
Yeah.
Without
Yeah.
them going to prison or having some kind of.
It
Well, no,
wasn't, yeah,
let's
it was
touch
a
on what
trial
he
for money.
can talk about it. So this is a big deal. You went all the way to the federal government with a client who was a cannabis company in relation to the taxes section that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. So what was that about? What can you tell us
Basically,
about
you have a trial, and with the IRS. The IRS is its own little court system.
that?
It's a kind of administrative judges who make a decision about what your tax liability is.
Do you think
So
they're biased because
what's
That's a good question.
right,
depends how lazy. Some of them are very lazy, some of them are very
but
proactive.
they're being employed by the what do you call it, the prosecution, not the prosecution,
The system. They're part of the system, and you're the
no,
outsider.
that's not what I'm looking for, but the person that is the punisher is also the judge, jury, and
Executioner?
executioner.
I don't know what you're getting at. I'm just trying
The
to
judge is
say words.
the finder of fact, the finder of fact.
Okay, so what Justin's asking is like, is it fair? Will you get a fair trial with an administrative judge that is employed by the same government that probably doesn't like you as a company? I feel like you're
Well,
the outcast.
every judge has his own personal biases, and so you can't escape that in any courtroom anywhere. But the rules of evidence do they are codified. So like the things that the court is going to consider, I think that you probably would get a more fair trial than you might think.
Do you think people should fight more and they just choose not to because of the difficulty that comes along with going to court and employing a lawyer?
The expenses are exorbitant, and the emotional toll is also quite high as well.
I know Justin's had his experience with, the court system in the cannabis space.
Yeah.
I've had minimal experience with it, thank goodness, because, we're awesome. But like, back in the day in California, as a business owner, were they more likely just to take it as opposed to fight it?
Well, it wasn't. It was the long product of negotiation with the attorney for the government, and we were able to reach a very equitable settlement that I think was very favorable.
So, how much did they get their tax liability reduced?
By a considerable amount. I'll tell you that much.
It's so vague, but I understand. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the fact that you're a good attorney that keeps the privilege, client privilege safe. But like,
you don't know who the client is, though. It's really not privileged info. You're just
if you made the news, it is. Well, no, because that would be public.
It was a lot of money. We're talking about many digits.
How many
that they did not have to pay, Justin?
How many pairs of shoes could you buy?
Put it in Louis Vuittons, please.
Yeah, I'm not actually familiar with those, but I assume
Barbados. How many John Varvatos boots could you buy? Pairs of boots.
Buy
sets.
The Morrison Sharpies. You could probably you would never have to buy another pair again. I'll tell you that much.
Ooh, what's the exchange rate for John Varvatos right now, Justin?
Depends if you get them in a boutique or if you get them on eBay.
I don't think I buy anything on eBay.
No,
you designer.
Should. No, you should.
Yeah, you should.
I should buy men's shoes on eBay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. I'm shutting down the labs right now. I'm going into eBay purchasing. Well, I think it's interesting that the cases that you chose to take on. We had Michael Minardi on last time, who is a cannabis attorney in Florida, talking specifically with us about cannabis DUIs increasing in our state, and how he's taken on this obscene amount of DUI cases when routine traffic stops go bad, or they deem somebody suspicious. And
those are very interesting.
Yeah, but none of them have actually come to fruition, a whole beginning, middle, end. They're all at the same point right now. And so we don't know how they're going to turn out. There's no case law about intoxication. What is one of the more difficult cases to help your clients win? When people are talking about how to litigate in the cannabis space, what is the most difficult thing to litigate?
The most difficult thing to litigate in this space of when you're dealing with cannabis is, I would say, just the unpredictability of what the prosecutor is going to be like, because that's, a lot of prosecutors want to, establish and create a peaceful resolution, a plea, in other words,
that's the dream, right?
That's the dream. And that happens in every other case. But because there's this uncertainty with marijuana, it can create a situation where pleas are unlikely, or the pleas are unnecessarily inflated or higher than they should be, because there isn't that established basis of case law. And so you basically get punished worse than if you did something, wrong for, I don't know, for possession of some other kind of controlled substance, right? Because
the man's got to get us down. Yes.
Because the man's got to get us down. I mean, if you're caught with cocaine, I can pretty much tell you before going to court what the punishment is going to look like.
What is it if I got caught with cocaine right now?
Well, it would depend.
Like a dabble of it.
A dabble, a dash. Okay.
Yeah.
Just not okay.
I don't know what the measurements for cocaine are.
It would be worse if it was crack cocaine, right?
Yes, it wouldn't be good.
Because
crack cocaine is worse than regular cocaine?
Yeah.
What if it was Cocaine with a splash of
because
heroin.
professionals and Hollywood people use cocaine and minorities use crack as a
That's actually an
generalization.
interesting point, because that's the same correlation between cannabis prohibition now and before, and then psychedelic prohibition and now and before. Like now, psychedelics are considered, couples therapy, mental health therapy for PTSD. And all of a sudden, it's like they didn't have to go through the same hurdles that us cannabis industry professionals had to go through, because it was created by a bunch of old white guys instead of like stigmatized with minorities like cannabis was. So I feel like that's not fair, but we're going to capitalize on it anyways, right, Justin?
Right.
Yeah. We're just going to get into psilocybin research. We're going to be the research dummies that we donate our time and just show up at the doorstep. So I want to know what the answer is. How much time would I get right off the bat for getting busted with a dash of cocaine?
What's your record like?
Perfect.
Perfect. You're going to be, I mean, it's not, you're going to get some kind of probation. It's probably going to be court probation. And
I don't have to go to jail?
Highly doubtful.
Not for a
Okay.
dash.
What if it was
Not for a dash.
kilo?
Then, you're getting a paid vacation.
Okay, I'm going to go for a while, right?
Yes.
I need to make
Yeah.
arrangements for my dogs. Okay.
Yes, you do.
Okay. What if it was a pound of weed?
I mean, well, that and the question we're talking, obviously we're talking about California here. A pound of weed, that's probably going to translate to some kind of a charge, but it's going to be some kind of a trafficking charge, but you're going to be okay.
I think it's a
unless you have a
misdemeanor
license
in California.
What?
Right? Because remember we had the guest on the show that was the illegal grower.
Oh yeah, he's been on twice.
And
Logan,
yes,
we called
and
him.
Logan said that one of the reasons that he does it in California, in San Francisco, was that where he was?
Yep, he was in San Francisco.
Which is where you are, actually.
Yes.
It's interesting, is because it was a misdemeanor.
Yeah. So
Florida,
in San Francisco,
you get a paid vacation.
what?
In Florida, you'd get arrested and
In Florida,
yes.
it doesn't even have to be really weed. It could be like hemp or like weed.
Even with a pound, you're going to be okay in California because you could buy a pound. And so, I could walk into a store today, just buy a couple of ounces, or I could go to several different stores and have them together and say that I purchased them legally.
And then if you go a couple states over, there's a minimum mandatory sentence, just like here in Florida. If you get caught with over 20 grams, this is still in place. This has not changed. Nobody has even like really addressed trying to change it. So a couple states over, like Idaho, they are not super canna friendly. They were like the last ones to hop on board. But like you'll have minimum mandatory sentence plus minimum mandatory fines of like 6 figures. I mean, you could be in jail for over 30 years in some states. You can be put to death in some countries.
Right. That's what I was going to say, is that is kind of the way of the world, right? Because if you got caught with not even that much,
a pound is a lot of weed.
Like in Indonesia, but not, I'm right. I'm saying like not even a pound. Like probably you could have like
10 grams in China. Yeah.
Like you probably have like this much, right? In
Singapore, you could have a joint. It wouldn't matter.
Yeah, but there's some countries, I think it's China, where you can actually be put to death for cannabis. Death.
I don't know about China.
It's one of the it's not Thailand, because you can get away with murder in Thailand. You can get away with pretty much anything in Thailand. But I don't know, but yeah, they still have the death penalty for drugs. And their like jails are just filled with inmates that got caught with drugs.
Yeah, there's a lot of countries like that. They're mostly Islamic nations, or sometimes in certain parts of Asia, which actually, like Indonesia is primarily, not that this is not like a religious statement, just simply that it's very strict in those places.
Yeah, but don't they get like opium for opiates from Afghanistan?
Yeah. What about it?
I'm just saying that's a pretty religious area, and they're fine.
Oh, that's a very interesting point. actually. But
I
it's
make
not,
a lot of interesting points.
but it's not
Sometimes.
people, like in that country, it's a major source of their economy,
Revenue. Yeah, of
but they're
course.
exporting it to other places.
But still, I wonder if they would be honest about the numbers of any type of people that kind of skim a little off the top before they send it
I
off to
wouldn't
big
trust.
pharma.
Yeah, I don't think the Taliban is giving accurate reporting.
All I know is that I'm not buying heroin from the Taliban. So that's what we're going to end on because our hour is up.
But you should know where you're committing
100% don't be a dumbass and travel with weed
because
out
if,
of the
if
country.
you get caught in Spain or something, they might confiscate it from you. It's not a big deal. If you get caught in Indonesia or one of these other countries that we were talking about, or even Russia now, you're fucked.
Okay, so this brings me to a last point I want to make. And so this show will come out on Saturday, which will be November 4th, and MJ Biz is coming up. Now, I want to remind everybody who's going to be frequenting this amazing event, which is a staple of the cannabis industry, about some of the laws regarding cannabis and transportation. So when I went to MJ Biz a couple years ago, a guy in front of me and his girlfriend got caught with like a couple of Ziploc bags in his backpack, which was his carry-on, in the Las Vegas airport, because everyone was there for weed conference and they bought weed there legally. It is adult use. But they did get caught with it in his bag.
Mhm.
Now, this is not going to be legal advice. This is not going to be something that is the norm, but they actually made them throw it away in a dumpster. I got to find this dumpster at the airport because that's where everyone throws their weed away when they get caught. And then I end up seeing this couple later at the terminal and they were just fine. He was just like, oh, I had to throw it away.
Exactly. That would not have happened in Indonesia.
No, but just remember when you're traveling to Vegas for MJ Biz, do not get on the plane with any weed. Trust me, they've got weed there. Okay. And you can buy it anytime your heart desires. And there will be taxi cabs that will take you to dispensaries and they get little kickbacks. You get free joints. I got abducted. It's a long story, but they'll take you wherever you want to go. There's plenty of weed around and it's all safe.
If he had put it in his prison wallet, it probably would have been fine.
What? No. I asked him to take me to the conference and he took me to a dispensary out of the way. I kind of count that as being
right. But Derek had it in his backpack. If he had put it in his prison wallet, they would have never found it.
Right. Or his like his checked bag, maybe. And I don't want to go into what prison wallets are. I just assume our listeners are pretty awesome and they understand that they have that access. So do not take your cannabis on the airplane with you. There's plenty of weed in Vegas and they'll let you buy it legitimately. And then when you come home, just leave it. You don't need to buy a bunch of it out there because you're going to come home and your weed will be here when you get home. So this is very simple, elementary like things here, but don't be dumb and get caught with weed at MJ Biz in an airport.
Just don't be dumb.
Just don't.
And if you have to bring home a joint, you should do Operation Highlighter. Okay.
I don't know what that is. I'm going to Google it because that's hilarious. And second, no, a joint is not worth it to go through all that kind of trouble to smuggle. No. That's a lot of trouble to smuggle. Just get there, get to Vegas, get all your sins in, prostitution, gambling, weed, and then go home and leave everything there.
Right. But what if you were going to Idaho and, you wanted
Nobody goes to Idaho. That's a fact. I know that, that is an actual fact. Nobody goes to Idaho for fun.
I conceived children in Idaho.
Of course, Coeur d'Alene. Coeur d'Alene is for lovers.
Not Coeur d'Alene.
I don't know. That's the only place I've been in Idaho.
It is for lovers.
It is for lovers. We'll end there. Andrew, thank you for joining us on the Marijuana Mind.
It's been a pleasure.
We appreciate your insight and your dry sense of humor is actually very refreshing.
We'd like to give our best to Epi.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I will pass that along.
Thank you.
The cat is, I'll allow it. I'm a dog person, but I'm glad it's not like Mr. Jiggles or like Miss, Saint Waffles, some really weird name. I don't know. People name their cat weird names. So have a wonderful day. Thank you for joining us. This is Cynthia Brewer signing off for the Marijuana Mind and my amazing co-host, he who is shooting fake guns at your face if you're only listening and not watching online. Go ahead, Justin, do your thingy.
But it's adorable, right?
It looks like a
Too
child
cute.
shooting little guns at me. Like if you could go pew, pew.
Pew, pew, pew,
Yeah.
pew.
Yeah. Super
That got
aggressive.
you in it.
Very
Got
nice.
you right in the heart.
Are you gonna keep it?
Thank you
keep
for
it-
joining us. It was a pleasure. We've been trying to get you on our show for years now, and
He's been
finally,
trying to come on the show too. And Justin just keeps shutting that down because he's aggressive.
Oh,
well,
we'll see you next week.
You bested us at last, long last.
Yes.
So, it was thank you for joining us on a great show as usual, and
Keeping it.
we love you, and
Keeping it.
keep that fan mail coming in. You know, we love it.
Just do your outro, you motherfucker.
Oh, keeping it lean, keeping it green, right? Forgot
Keeping
that.
your spleen, whatever you made up this week. And 100 episodes next time.
Next time,
Yes, this is 99.
no, just say it's like
Oh.
97. Gives us a little time. This is
97.5.
97.
We no,
97.
I can't go. We can't. There's no takesies backsies. This is number 99 and number
No, no.
100. Yeah,
Wow.
This
it's
is
in
Half a
100.
century.
It's a big deal.
No, I'm
He's
working on
huge
our
in
100
Denmark.
guests.
He's
So you
so
gotta,
big in
this is
Denmark. It's
97. I
funny.
need some time.
No, I can't undo it. And you know which guest
Just kidding,
needs to come.
folks. It's 97.
99, big guest coming. Justin has made pre-arrangements. I don't want to get everyone's hopes up, but my hopes are up. So it might be our last episode if he doesn't make this happen.
97. We're on 97.
All right, we're done.